prolapse is way more than just a physical condition. It affects us mentally, emotionally, sexually, and socially. Almost all elements of our health are affected. And as such, all elements of myself and my approach to motherhood were affected by this diagnosis of this condition that I'd actually never heard of before I was told that I had it.
Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the Motherhood Made Magic podcast. Today I'm speaking with Kimmy Smith. Kimmy is a pregnancy and postnatal exercise specialist, yoga teacher and a proud mum to 3 little girls. Kimmy was a professional athlete and corporate lawyer, played netball at an elite level for over 10 years, representing the New South Wales Swifts, and was a member of the Australia Diamond squad. Drawing from her experience as a professional athlete, Kimmy is passionate about supporting women to feel strong during their pregnancy and to return to exercise in a safe and positive way after birth. Highly qualified and respected, Kimmy has been featured in Women's Health Mag, Body and Soul, the Sydney Morning Herald, and more. She's the founder of Kimmy Smith Fit and co-founder of the Empowered Motherhood Program, giving women physio-led exercise and expert education for every stage of pregnancy, birth, and their motherhood journey. This is a topic that's close to my heart, and I'm going to cut straight to our conversation around prolapse. If you haven't heard anything about this condition, you're about to get it in all kinds of detail. If it's something that you have experienced, you will know how it affects your life, and you will feel very seen and heard throughout our conversation here. It's a good one.
I have a pelvic organ prolapse, and I think that prolapse is way more than just a physical condition. It affects us mentally, emotionally, sexually, and socially. Almost all elements of our health are affected. And as such, all elements of myself and my approach to motherhood were affected by this diagnosis of this condition that I'd actually never heard of before I was told that I had it. Like most women who have prolapse aren't aware of that phrase until they hear it as in a diagnosis. So I was an elite athlete, as you mentioned, and so exercise was very much a part of who I was and my self-identity. As an elite athlete and a corporate lawyer, you kind of get a picture of my personality a little bit, like very type A, quite driven. And that was just, that was me. I was so really wrapped up tightly in that identity. And so during pregnancy, I felt quite invincible. And although I started to have little warning signs, I could already see quite a large separation in my pregnancy. I was leaking a lot. I just ignored them. And because
we don't know what is and isn't normal, do we? Especially when it's the first time.
Especially when it's the first time. And this was, my eldest is 8, so almost 9 years ago. And I think there just wasn't that influx of information like there is now with social media. It was really like what you were told by your midwives or GP or obstetrician was what you went off. And often those appointments didn't touch a lot on you as the mother.
Yeah.
Which is still an issue, I believe. So when I was diagnosed with a prolapse at 6 weeks postpartum, again, I didn't know a lot about this condition. So I was just obsessed with getting back into exercise and running. And it really wasn't until after the birth of my second where I was leaking all the time. Even walking, 30 minutes, I had this constant feeling of heaviness and dragging that I think everything started to unravel. And I realized that this current way of pushing and very, masculine energy, it just wasn't serving me anymore. And I feel like that was my moment of unraveling, of cracking open. And from there, I shifted my approach to almost everything in my life. I became a lot more kinder to myself. I slowed down a lot. I changed the way I moved to really support my pelvic floor first. That was always my primary consideration. And choosing movement patterns and exercise, I started to do a lot more research and just it sounds beautiful, but it was actually like just really really challenging. I would say I don't think I had depression, but I was really, not in a great place because I think I was jealous of women who could just return to exercise after birth. I was the one sitting back and watching other people chase my kids, and having loved running, like that was really hard for me, to not be able to just jump on the trampoline with them or play. But I think I'm in a point in my life now where I can see the silver lining of this condition and all I've learned and created through it. But yeah, it's been a definite journey, but I feel like it's a big journey for everyone, motherhood. And for some women that happens straight away, and for others like me, it's over time that we slowly unravel who we were and reinvent ourselves as this new woman and mother.
Yeah, and it is almost a deconstruction of self before you can reconstruct it. It's not flick a switch and it's done.
No, yeah, exactly.
You mentioned you got a diagnosis of prolapse at 6 weeks after the birth of your first child, and you were nice enough to allow me to quote you in the book that I've just written, Mommy, You're Not Broken. And in that section, you said that essentially it felt like your insides were falling out, yet it was still a difficult path to actually get a diagnosis. Is that correct?
Yeah, so...
or that your concerns weren't taken seriously?
I went to the hospital a few days after my birth because I did feel like that. I felt that sensation, which is common for women with prolapse, to feel that heaviness, and it does feel like your insides are falling out, even though they aren't. And I know that wording can sound quite terrifying. So I went to the hospital and I was told that everything looked really normal and just basically sent home. And I think from that, because I didn't know, I sort of, was pushing myself a little bit more. Like most first-time mothers, you think the 6 weeks is this magical milestone.
Yeah. That your doctor will just sign you a little note and say, yeah, cool, go back to the gym. That's great. Go for it.
You're healed. Well done. Yeah. So I did return to exercise. I owned a group fitness business at that time. And then I think I had my 6-week check again. Like the first one was for my baby and the second one was for me. And that's when they said that the doctor said I had a pelvic organ prolapse. So I think they did a good job to pick that up. And then I was referred to Liz, who's my now business partner in the Empowered Motherhood Program. And I worked a lot with her to heal the prolapse. And she also took into account the kind of person I was and what was important to me emotionally as well as physically. And we worked together, I think, to really tiptoe on that border of what was possible for me and what wasn't at that stage.
To find a care provider that's going to tailor things to you is so essential, who has the expertise but also takes your emotional state and priorities into account too, is wonderful. So what did that treatment program look like for you?
So prolapse, I think a lot of women think that prolapse is just a pelvic floor condition. And during pregnancy, the pelvic floor muscles, they stretch, they weaken and they thin, just like almost every other muscle in our body gets a little bit weaker. It often elongates during pregnancy. And what this means is often, especially if you have a vaginal birth, the levator hiatus, which is the passage through which the urethra, vagina and bowel pass, it gets wider. And those pelvic floor muscles have to stretch up to 300% of what they normally are. So
yeah, it's massive. Any other muscle in your body is not going to cope with that.
Exactly. So yes, the stronger the levator ani muscles are, the stronger your pelvic floor muscles are, the more it offers support for the pelvic organs. So pelvic floor is a huge part of it, and my pelvic floor was basically non-existent. So there's a huge part of that treatment protocol, which was pelvic floor exercises for me. But another big part of pelvic organ prolapse is biomechanics, the way you move in your day-to-day, the way you breathe, your posture, if you have tension in other parts of your body, which is causing your pelvis to compensate, I guess. And also your stress, your diet, there's a huge amount of factors. So I think what on top of just pelvic floor, what we looked at and what I've continued to look at with Liz and also with other physios is my biomechanics, you know, my compensatory movement patterns I developed during pregnancy.
Which we all do.
Yeah, which we all do. And especially if you're incontinent, you tend to grip wherever you can to stop that leaking. So I personally would grip a lot through my ribs, which obviously probably wasn't helpful one bit, but to me it felt like a protective mechanism. We looked at my posture. I think I used to lean back a lot in that little, you know, the pregnancy swagger that we get. So just making sure my breastbone and pubic bone were always stacking, you know, movement patterns, making sure I wasn't going to squats to pick up the baby, but hinging from the hips. And there's just a whole range of things which makes prolapse treatment quite personalised and multifactored. So, and then obviously there was all the mental emotional side effects as well, which I had to work through in my own time. It's a complicated journey, but I've invested a lot personally into it, but I think it's worthwhile for me now where I am in this point in my life. Oh, and the final thing is pessary. I wear a pessary, which helps to support my pelvic organs in my day-to-day life and during exercise as well. So, and it relieves that feeling of heaviness that women often experience with prolapse.
Yeah, a pessary is almost kind of like if you imagine like a diaphragm is for birth control, a pessary is a similar kind of device that sits inside the vaginal cavity to help hold the pelvic organs up, essentially, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a medical grade silicone device, and it can be, if you imagine you insert it sort of like a diaphragm, but it can be a ring, it can be a cube. There's all different shapes depending on the type of prolapse you have, and size of your levator hiatus and a lot of different factors. So getting fitted for one, Liz, my business partner describes it as a sports bra for your vagina. So you go and get fitted. You've got to find the right one, you know.
That's a perfect description. That's great.
Yeah.
I think something that frightens women when they realize or are diagnosed with a prolapse, and not only is it going to affect their life, but I think a great fear for some women is that it's going to affect their capacity to have further children as well. So you did go back to have a third pregnancy and a third child too. What was your experience of managing your pelvic floor during a third pregnancy and post-birth period?
So I actually had 2 babies after my prolapse diagnosis, and I had 2 vaginal births after, which I know a lot of women are fearful of having another vaginal birth and that bearing down and pushing. Look, when you are pregnant, your prolapse symptoms, they do get worse because you have the weight of the uterus, all of the amniotic fluid, the weight of the baby, extra blood, and the, you know, the hormones relaxing, releasing ligaments and muscles around there. So everything's softening, everything's widening. And so for someone with prolapse, it doesn't feel great. I think it brought up a lot of fear for me. I just had to manage that, knowing that, and I chatted a lot with my physio about it. We went a lot through my birth plan, how I was going to push. We wanted to really minimize the pushing stage. So I really had to wait until my baby's head was right deep in my pelvic cavity before I started to push. I wanted to push to use gravity, but not too much. So I was going to push in an all-fours position or leaning forward on the bed. There was a lot that went into the postnatal rehab, making sure that I had a lot of downtime. So I was, you know, not on my feet all the time as a new mum. So teaching my toddler or toddlers to, you know, make sure they could walk, make sure they learnt to step up before they climbed on me, making sure that they were happier to go in the pram rather than me carry them. I think my pelvic floor is in a better position now than it was after my second birth. Probably not than after my first, but I understand that it's a huge decision for women, but you can recover from it. You just have to find, especially when it comes to birth choices, the solution that works best for you. And I know for some women that is having a Caesar because they have too much fear around the birth. And for other women, you know, they sort of think the damage has been done and a second or third birth isn't going to exponentially increase the amount of damage to their pelvic floor, so they're okay to go with it. And that's where I landed up, that the damage from a second or third birth wasn't going to exponentially increase the damage to my pelvic floor. It might have increased it by 10%, but it was something that I could recover from using all the strategies I had in place. It's something that we cover a lot in the EMP is pregnancy with prolapse and postnatal recovery with prolapse, I think because of my own experience. And because of Liz having treated so many women, she was sick of hearing women say, why didn't anyone tell me? And what can I do about this? And sick of seeing so many lists of all the exercise you can't do and everything you have to give up in your life, rather than empowering women with options that are prolapse safe.
Those lists of you can't do this and you can't do this and you can't, and it's the same for abdominal separation too. It's so many things are seen as off the table when the evidence isn't there as to why it can't be done, or the teaching isn't there as to why it can't, like how it can be done safely.
Yeah, I find those lists so infuriating because, one, like not lifting anything heavy. Okay, how does a mum with toddler and a pram and not lift anything heavy, like giving women these lists just isn't helpful. Whereas giving them the strategies, okay, if you do need to lift, this is what we want you to do. We want you to exhale as you lift, engage your pelvic floor, pivot from your hips, hold the baby tight to your chest, then they have a strategy that they can use to protect their body. Whereas the lists just create fear and nothing else, really.
You have to essentially consider that mothering is the workplace. So if you were a worker in a factory, they're never going to say, well, you can never lift a box again. They're going to teach you how to lift properly. We have to give these same support and strategies that we've been giving in occupational rehab for decades into the mothering space as well. And at this point in time, the funding is a key issue, that the funding's not there. I know you're working a lot in advocacy in general, but what I wanted to speak with you next about was about Empowered Motherhood Program, how you've come to put this together, what it looks like, what you can offer to women.
Thanks. So the Empowered Motherhood Program came out of Liz and I relationship and working together and our mutual passion for maternal health. And we discussed a lot over the period of time that we'd come to know each other. And I'd already released a postnatal fitness app. And we discussed putting physio-based workouts into that program. And then it turned out we were both pregnant at the same time. So we said, let's do it. Let's film now whilst we're pregnant. So we ended up, instead of filming 20 workouts, we ended up filming 300 over the course of 2 years. Over the course of 3 years now. So through our pregnancy, through our postnatal recovery, and then through Liz's subsequent pregnancy. And what we really have created is, we believe, the most in-depth pregnancy and postnatal program in Australia that combines physio-led exercise with leading expert education from obstetricians and midwives and doulas and lactation consultants and psychologists. And it places it all in a really simple and quite inspiring week-by-week program where you follow from first trimester all the way through to birth preparation, birth recovery, and then returning to the type of exercise you love, whether that's running or high impact or Pilates or whatever it is, helping you to return to exercise safely. And what we are most proud of is, I guess, the depth of it, but also the fact it caters to women who were previously ignored. So we have a whole week-by-week program for pelvic organ prolapse. We have an entire abdominal separation and core connection program. We have a week-by-week program for pelvic girdle pain and pubis symphysis in pregnancy. And we have expert videos for obstetric anal sphincter tears, so 3rd and 4th degree tears, incontinence, mental health. It's just, the list is huge. Back pain, C-section birth recovery. So it really covers everything. And what we're so grateful for is the women who are finding it, who, have had a prolapse and they've chosen to have a C-section birth their second time, and they have something that actually supports them rather than just having a set of modifications on another program, So it's very niche and we're just for mothers, but yeah, we're really incredibly proud of it.
Yeah, and I can see why. Having spent quite a bit of time, many years working in the space of exercise and rehab, you're right. I think it is the most comprehensive program that you're going to find, particularly one that is multidisciplinary and supportive. And I think the term inclusive gets tossed around a bit, but for what you offer and at a reasonably accessible price point, I don't think you're going to find much better on offer around Australia right now.
Our goal is to get it into the public and private healthcare system so that it is available to all women. So regardless of, socioeconomic status or geographical location, they have access to this program so they can feel informed and empowered. But at the moment, before that happens, we're really happy going, working straight through social media and finding the women who need us through word of mouth and all of that. So yeah, we're happy with where we're at, but our goal is to hopefully get it into hands of all women.
Yeah, absolutely. So the title of this podcast is Motherhood Made Magic. What are you doing in your day-to-day life as well as in your business to make this experience a magical time for you, not just a hard slog?
Great question. So I learned a long time ago that I did not want to be a martyr, and I felt that's what I was becoming, a victim in my own life where I was the one doing everything. I think at the time I was breastfeeding, so I was the one getting up all the time at night. My girls were quite clingy, so I was the one taking them to drop-offs and pickups. I was the one cleaning the house and blah, blah, blah. The list went on. And I just felt myself slipping slowly into this martyr/victim mode. And I knew that that wasn't going to make me happy and that no one else was really going to step in and change it for me because they probably didn't realize the resentment I was carrying internally. So now I focus on my own health and happiness by really trying to prioritize my health. I try to move every day. And my happiness, I work now 3 days a week. I dedicate to work, and 2 days a week I have just with, I've only got one baby at home with me now, the other two are at school. And with her, we just do fun things, like I relax on that day. I really try to just enjoy myself, be out in nature. Through my business, I'm really focused on building community at the moment. So we've just created small support groups for each of our members to join because I think we all need that connection so desperately at the moment. And it has been magical seeing the way that these women who otherwise didn't know each other have just come together and supported each other and encouraged each other and the difference it's made in their lives. So I guess that's probably the most magical thing for me at the moment, witnessing and being a part of that.
I know you can't see me right now, but I have a massive smile on my face. That all sounds great. Kim, thank you so much for your time today. Where can we find you?
Thanks for having me, and huge congratulations on the book launch as well. I don't think I've mentioned that. So our website is empoweredmother.com.au and our social media is empoweredmother_. And my personal one is Kimmy Smith Fit.
Thanks, Kim. Speak again soon.
Thanks so much for having me, Anna.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for tuning in. I hope you loved listening to this episode as much as I loved recording it. If you love what I do, follow along with me on social media at annacusack postpartum on Facebook and Instagram. Check out my website www.annacusack.com.au or find my book, Mama You're Not Broken, Unmasking the Unspoken Emotions of Modern Motherhood on Amazon. See you next time.